Thank God. Jack brings out the worst. John, sorry. Good morning, it's 8:45. I would like to bring to order the meeting of the Queen Anne's County Planning Commission for Thursday, July 10, 2025. If you would please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and good morning. John, do we have any public comments that signed up for, that were outside of the text amendment? And while we're waiting for that, just so those are aware and for the public, council is joining us on Zoom. So Lindsay, welcome to the room.
I'm going to say they were probably for the...
Can you hear us okay, Lindsay? Sorry. We cannot hear you currently. Okay.
I had to make her co-host so
Yep.
she could.
There we go.
There we go. All right, welcome. Good morning, Counselor.
Good morning. Thank you all to attend virtually.
Yes. Are there any extension requests? Don't see any. Updates, legislation, legal matters.
Sure. Good morning, Stephanie Jones. I have a few legislative updates for you. As you know, you've seen quite a few text amendments recently, so I'll just give you some updates on those. The citizen-sponsored text amendments, the commissioners did vote on those at their, June 24th meeting. They did approve text amendment 2503, which was for your non-residential building height in the suburban commercial, which was to increase it from 30 to 40 feet. And then they also approved 2504, which was to add daycares in the airport protection and Kent Island Gateway District. They also did deny 2507, which was the amendment in relation to subdivision and reconfiguration of the TDRs. So those were the citizen-sponsored text amendments, so they're all finalized now. The two that did get approved will become effective August 9th. Also, the cannabis amendment, that will become effective July 26th, so that will be coming soon as effective date. And then also your cluster buffer yard text amendment, which was conveyed to the county commissioners, was introduced on the 24th, June 24th. So those are my updates for all your text amendments you see. Yep.
Question, what happened, the text amendment for the shooting range in an area outside
So
of
that
what
one
the
was
other...
withdrawn. The applicant withdrew that one.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Mm-hmm.
And good morning, Amy Mordock, Planning Director. I have very light updates, and they're mainly staff-related. I'm happy to announce that Sarah Rondeau has joined our staff, and she has brought us to full staffing levels. We had a vacancy in our permit tech division, and she's been on board for about a week. And has a really strong professional background, customer service background, and a working knowledge of our database, which is terrific. Which leads me to my next update. I know I've mentioned to you that our citizen self-service portal has been online, and I just want to let you know that it's extremely valuable. It's become very fulsome. There's a lot of information there. There are a lot of residents who are taking advantage, a lot of contractors who are now submitting online. You can register to have your own account, and that allows you to see everything, all of your building permit applications. If you have an active permit, it allows you to track the progress of those permits. Also, if you don't register, if you're just a casual user, you can still go into the Citizen Self-Service portal and you can look up information about permits. You won't get as deep a dive into that information, but you will see the permits that are active. You will see the status of those permits. We have added licensing. So now electrical licenses can be renewed online, and that unrolled and was very successful. It's very convenient. So really happy to report that, and a part of what we're doing is starting to, when there are planning projects that are approved, because we're not ready to go live with active planning projects. That takes hardware, both on the part of the consultants and our staff. But in terms of seeking public information, our techs have put that information online. So if there's a site plan or a subdivision that's been approved in the past, citizens can go online and search for those projects, and they can see the full files. So all of our public information that is always available in the office is very accessible online now. So we're also updating the website to make sure that the information that people are getting in terms of the forms and applications are all streamlined, are all consistent. There were some older forms that were on our website, just as over time when we update forms, they haven't all been kept up to date in terms of getting the old ones off. So now we're working on getting all of those forms updated. So when someone is on the self-service portal and they're being directed to our website to look at how-to guides to apply for building permits, the building permit applications, all of those forms are being updated. So everything is becoming very streamlined and very sleek, and we have a really great staff who is really taken on the task. So I know it's been a long time coming to go online, but we're there now, and it really looks good. Additionally, if you haven't checked out your the Planning Commission website in terms of the links on our Agenda Center, please do that. Since our minutes are archived now through video, our QACTV team has done an amazing job at marrying the archive videos to the agendas, the Planning Commission agendas, so citizens can go in and look at older meetings, be able to pull up the staff reports for those meetings, and then look at the video, which are all earmarked in terms of where the applications are time-stamped in those videos. I mean, it looks wonderful. It's very user-friendly. So as we update more aspects of the website, I'll keep you updated. But if people have questions from you about projects, please send them to the Citizen Self-Service Portal. If they're ongoing Planning Commission projects, we have a lot of good information within the agendas. The staff reports are there, and the conversations that we have in our live meetings are easily accessible. So it's been a really positive move into the future.
Congratulations. Decent feedback on that interface with contractors and such? That
Yes, yep.
they're taking advantage of it.
They are, and what's really helpful is our team is able to field questions, because there are always technical difficulties, there are always growing pains with learning a new system, but we've been able to, in-house, really guide people through the process. So it really has been the strength of our team that has made it so smooth, and that it's really encouraged people to sign up, hearing that it works. So.
Hopefully staying on that trajectory.
Yep.
Good.
Sure are.
Is that all from the two of you ladies? Fantastic. I don't believe anybody's really up for a break quite yet. So we'll start in with the text amendment. County Commissioner sponsored county.
Tom,
Yes,
I might ask that we ought to introduce our newest member.
that's a very valid point. Thank you. Welcome back, Art Ebersberger. No stranger to planning commissions.
Thank you.
Good to have you back in service and be fully staffed, as Amy said. We are down our chair today, but she expects to be back next month. Thank you, John.
And with that, I've been told by both my attorney and that one up there that I need to recuse.
Fair enough.
So with that, I'll be leaving.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you for your service today, and appreciate you bringing that to my attention. Bill?
My pleasure.
We'll call you back in when we're finished, for any closing remarks.
No offense, I'm going to work.
You're heading out. All right, fantastic. Thanks for your service today.
See you today.
All right. County Commissioner sponsored County Ordinance 2510, Renewable Energy Certainty Act. A bunch of fancy language, which essentially will remove all existing utility scale solar standards and add regulations for community solar generating systems, energy storage devices, and solar energy generating stations for consistency with state law known as the Renewable Energy Certainty Act, as required by SB 913, House Bill 1036. Ms. Jones, I believe you are on point.
Yep, Amy and I have both been tag teaming this amendment. I've been a long time coming. Amy has spent a lot of work during the General Assembly session in regards to the bill. But basically what we are doing now is because it comes effective July 1, as required by Senate Bill 931, we are required to update our solar regulations in order to be consistent with the state regulations. Kind of like you've already mentioned, all the existing utility scale solar provisions that are in our code will be removed. We will be adding what will be the community solar energy generating stations into the code, and also the energy storage devices, but also there will be changes obviously as to how the large scale or the community or large scale or utility scale, are treated, and then their requirements. There will be performance standards outlined for both the solar and also the energy storage that are within the code and the performance standards that have been drafted. All of those come specifically from Senate Bill 931. So because of the way that bill is drafted, municipalities, counties do not have much wiggle room as to what we can do or how we can change that bill. So most of this that's in this draft comes directly from the state. I don't know if you have much more to add. So basically there's setback requirements, landscaping requirements. The solar will be allowed in the ag, the CS, also the suburban industrial, and also we do need to, also the light industrial highway service, which is the LIHS. And we do need to add it to the suburban industrial business employment. That's not included in your draft today, but after looking through a few things, we realized we do need to add that one district into the list where it is permitted. Also, it will address, there still will be a decommissioning plan required, as we do require now. A lot of the standards, and Amy can probably attest to this, that the state did include in here do come from a lot of our existing solar regs. It's just that they have been tweaked. Either the size of the landscaping has been reduced. So basically, we don't have much wiggle room in this. There is one thing we did add, which is the compensatory preservation fund, which is to basically for any solar that's proposed on Class 1 soils, they will be required to pay that compensatory fund to the county in order to assist with further preservation. Do you all have any questions, comments? Amy, if you want to
last
add
compensatory
anything?
fund, that's unique to Queen Anne's County,
Yes.
right? That's above and beyond
Yes.
SB and the
931.
House and Senate bills.
Yes.
Got it.
It was something that was discussed, and Amy was there for all these discussions, but it was something that was discussed prior to Senate Bill 931. It was kind of in the conversation as to put it
During the drafting
in
of the
the
legislation.
drafting.
I see. Okay.
But that is no longer.
Question. 2.5 years ago, maybe 3, we had the discussion that, and I want to know if the bill impacts, we put in Queen Anne's County that if someone came before us, that they would specify what they would do when the life cycle of the panels was. Do we still retain that guideline that we put in place?
So there's a decommissioning plan. I think that's what you're referring
Yeah, I
to.
mean, in other words, they had to, restore the property or tell us what they were going to do with the panels when they were done.
Yep.
So they just didn't sit there and not have a function.
Yeah, so that's the decommissioning plan,
Okay.
which will, I think is held by the PSC.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
We have excuse me,
Go ahead, Ben.
a technical definition of Class 1 soil. I think of it as really good stuff, but there's probably something more explicit.
Can I hold just because council started to weigh in? I want to make sure I didn't skip over something procedural.
Nope, it was nothing procedural. The only thing I was going to add is that it might be beneficial to explain what's in a decommissioning plan, just to help the planning commission understand specifically when a solar project is approved. As part of that is the decommissioning plan that has the life cycle of the panels and exactly what is for when the life cycle ends, and that's that they have to be removed, including, you know, anything put under earth, and then the like kind topsoil put over top. So all of that is addressed within that plan.
Expand on that and or take Mr. Tillman's question?
Oh, I just was wondering what the technical definition, maybe for layman, is what Class 1 soil is. I think of it as being good stuff, but perhaps there's a better definition.
That is kind of a good example of it, I would
Okay,
say.
yeah.
It is determined by the USDA in regards as to what soil types are considered a Class 1 soil.
Okay.
In the map in front of you, you can see there, and this was included in your packet, but you're looking at the green would be your Class 1 soils in the county.
So that Class 1 designation could be several soil types?
Yes.
I see.
Yep.
Do you anticipate any pushback from the state because of the unique compensatory piece here?
We're careful because we cannot legally stray from the legislation, which is actually in effect now, as of July 1st. We feel as though attaching the compensatory payment to the way that we rank mouth easements and the way we calculate that value, and that we've attached that compensatory payment to this annotated code requirements and to our finance article, which is specific to agricultural preservation funding. We feel that we're meeting the intent of the provisions that are specific to our priority preservation area. So we feel that what we've done is, what we've added is in the spirit of the legislation. And it may be challenged.
I applaud you for finding that path and that connection, so thanks. I hope not.
And we found, the commissioners asked us to investigate that, and we did work very closely with Joe Pippin and Donna Landis-Smith, who manage our agricultural preservation program, to make sure that that we were functioning within the parameters of how that program actually works.
Counselor?
Sorry, I know it's really confusing attending by Zoom, so I'm not trying to interrupt, but I think that goes to an important point to this planning commission and your task here in making a recommendation with consistency with the comprehensive plan and the land use article. That compensatory component is an important discussion and an evaluation for you all. And if you find that the contribution helps consistency with the comprehensive plan because it preserves agriculture and is consistent with the land use chapter of the comprehensive plan, that's certainly a finding that you can make, which will add further backbone to the contribution as part of the text amendment.
Thank you. Is there any questions about Counselor's comments and or what she mentioned previously about decommissioning before you're satisfied, Art, with the
I'm
decommissioning
satisfied.
conversation?
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Counselor. All right. Are there any other questions for staff? Comments from staff?
I was going to say, I could maybe just give 1,000-foot view of what we're doing here and why the proposed ordinance looks as it does. So the language is very specific in the legislation, and it's very specific in terms of where these systems can go and can't go. So the zoning districts that are identified are districts that do not contain our growth areas, or do not contain areas of mixed residential use, medium and high-density residential use. So in the drafting, that was a very important aspect of the compromise that was reached, was to make sure that these systems aren't being sited in growth areas, which they have been in the past. Also, another aspect of the drafting of this bill was to try to put some sort of protection in our agricultural lands, and that is why the priority preservation area language is identified for these systems. I want to clarify that the priority preservation area identification is an annotated code requirement that this area be identified in our comprehensive plans. We did so. We have done so for the last several iterations of the comp plan, and most recently in the 2022 plan, and Stephanie's just sharing that map with you. The language is written in the legislation that the priority preservation areas that were in place at the time that this bill was enacted is our definitive PPA, it's called. So almost every jurisdiction in the state complied with that requirement. There are some that did not. So they will have to come up to speed with their comprehensive plan requirements. We're not one of those communities. So the acreage that you see on that map is our official PPA acreage. That acreage changes. It's a dynamic acreage because we've identified our priority preservation area, but when farms are placed in easement, through MET easements, mouth easements, rural legacy, those areas come out because they then enter the permanently preserved category. So our number is dynamic, but that 5% cap in our priority preservation area will be based on this 2022 number. Once a county reaches that 5% cap, then the county may opt to prohibit solar in that area, and the Public Service Commission will honor that. So there may be some jurisdictions that don't wish to prohibit, but if a jurisdiction wishes to do that, then they can. That 5% includes the acreage that we already have in solar. It includes utility scale, and it also includes community solar. So all of our community and utility scale acreage counts toward that tally to get to the 5%. There had been a lot of questions about how that worked, and I wanted to make sure that that was clearly understood. And that is how we've connected the compensatory funding. Another key point to mention is that the way we tally that acreage is based on the project area. We struggled with that on how we calculate that, because you have a leased area, you have a project area, you have the area that is, the parcel itself, but it's the area that is encumbered by the project. And that was something that was discussed thoroughly during the drafting of the legislation. And so now we will have a very formalized way to ask applicants to give us that acreage, because sometimes the leased area is bigger than the project area. So there are a lot of different ways to quantify it. And so at least that will be universal. And actually, Joe Pippin had mentioned, which was a really good point, that aspect of how we calculate the compensatory contribution, while we intended it to be based on the project area, is not clearly defined. So that is another addition we would like you to consider when this text amendment moves on with recommendation. Is not only do we need to add a district that doesn't qualify to be exempted, because our suburban industrial business district doesn't have a residential component, so it was an oversight that we didn't include it. But it also was an oversight that we didn't include the quantification of basing the compensatory contribution on our project area. So those are two things that we would like you to consider adding to the draft before you.
All right, any questions for staff while they're here?
Good.
Fair enough. I think we can move into public comment. Excuse me. First, Jay Falstad.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jay Falstad, Queen Anne's Conservation Association. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I have mixed feelings about this, about 931. In my view, I spent the last few months in Annapolis opposing 931. In my view, it's the most destructive bill in Maryland's history as it relates to farmland. However, the legislature has laid down a heavy hand in which counties cannot, as Amy and has said, there's no flexibility. I'm going to urge a favorable recommendation on this only because of the compensatory part and the fact that it protects Class 1 soils. But I just want to leave you with this. 931 was opposed by so many people across the state that we sought to try and have the issue put to referendum. And I was very involved with that, along with a lot of these people here. We collected thousands and thousands and thousands of signatures. This is just a small fraction of that. This happens to be only one section of Queen Anne's County. Your citizens in this county overwhelmingly oppose 931 because of what it does to agricultural land. What I found interesting is that the majority of our citizens want to keep farmland as farmland, productive for the future, and not have it industrialized by solar projects. And so, in closing, I'll say that I recommend a favorable recommendation, but I hold my nose in doing so. But it's only because we don't have any other choice. So with that, thank you very much for your time and your careful thought or careful consideration, and thanks for staff for putting together a very good and thorough report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Falstad. Carol Bean.
Hi, good morning. I'm Carol Bean with the Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, and certainly echo Jay Falstad's concern about this bill from the get-go, which we also, as an organization, opposed. You know, as we know, this is a significant land use change with these solar projects that has generational impacts. And through 931, you know, these kinds of projects enjoy kind of preferential treatment that is not extended to other forms of development. We do support the compensatory preservation contribution as it's proposed, but maybe want to urge consideration for some tweaks. We worked with Talbot County, which also uses the mouth criteria, but they require 100%. You're proposing 50%. So I think thinking through if there could be a more robust preservation fee, I think it's great that it's designated to the land preservation. And in Talbot County, just for your information, it also applies regardless of soil type. So any kind of conversion, agricultural use for a solar project triggers that mouth-based mitigation fee. So I think that's something to consider too. And I think, you know, if there is an interest in doing something that's based on soil type, there are legislation in other areas that have it tiered by soil type. That does make it harder, more bureaucratic to sort of track and do that kind of calculation, but there are models that do that. But I think a more robust fee than 50% would be called for. And another sort of alternative maybe to think of is one thing that we're concerned about is you see these projects change hand quite frequently, and there's not a really great system in place to sort of track that. So another alternative to consider is if you do go with a lower mitigation fee that it could be triggered again every time the project changes hands. And I think that's a way also for you guys to keep track of who owns these projects. That's good for you guys to know because you have a lot of other requirements with the landscaping, with all this. Like you need to know who's in charge of these things, and I think the landowners do as well. And I think there's a big hole there as well. So maybe thinking of a way that that fee gets triggered. But those are my thoughts.
To that point, Madam Director, can you speak to the 50%, why that number was used in drafting this ordinance?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So, basically, hi, Joe Pippin, Queen Anne's County, Soil Conservation District. So what we're using is mouth criterias. So, and that's published, but we're working in year in the rear. So 2024 fair market value for mouth farms was $11,544. So what we're proposing is take 50% of that value on Class 1 soils would be our fee. So yeah, that's where we are with that.
But what was the rationale for the number 50 versus 75 or 100?
So 50%, mouth looks at that as bargain sale. It's more towards what mouth is paying the farmers for the easements. So we're looking at basically taking Class 1 soils at a 50% rate, from the solar project, taking that money, putting in the fund, and using that money to preserve a Class 1 soil somewhere else. That's what we're looking at. Yeah.
And what about for the second point? I don't know if this is for you, Joe, or other staff, about we have a provision in code, I believe, that Councilor Drummond helped draft about tracking where the ownership of these utility solar scale, where that lies. Is that contained in this current form, or do we lose that tracking ability with this? You follow my question?
I do.
Musical chairs here.
So I recall that conversation distinctly, and that's been a long-standing issue. I don't believe that there was anything in our code that addressed how you track that transfer, and that's not in this draft. But I don't believe that there was language in our existing. Is there, that I'm missing it, Rob?
Rob Gunter, Planning and Zoning. You're talking about change of ownership?
Correct. And having to report back to the county, I'm assuming this department, who owns that solar, because often they're built and then they're sold, and then they, through different phases of the lifespan, they're bought, sold, and traded down the line.
It's not a very robust requirement, but our code does state that as projects are sold, the new ownership is required to notify the county, and then all the signage on the fences and everything must be updated as well with a new contact and a new emergency phone number.
So in your opinion, does that requirement carry through with this current?
It does not.
As drafted, does not? Okay. So Ms. Bean brings up a good point that we've, in the past, tried to fix. So is that a suggested language addition? I'm looking at counselor. Is that something, I'm looking at staff? Is that something that we overlooked, that we didn't think would fly?
So that's a piece of our legislation that developed in the past that I haven't seen implemented. So it is nothing in our existing language has been retained other than the influence that our code standards had on this drafting, which was significant. In terms of adding a detail like that, I guess I would defer to our council to see if that is something that would fall outside of the realm of what we could do. It seems that that could be a standard that we could apply to any project, not just to solar. I know it's more pressing with the solar development because that is an issue that we see almost exclusively. But in general, that may not be a bad standard to have in the code to apply to all projects. Lindsay?
Yeah, and I think you could, in making your consistency finding, find this bill more consistent with the comprehensive plan and the existing land use article and your code by requiring that component, which already exists. It was just, maybe administratively accidentally left out or not thought that it was enforced prior to, or that it really made a difference. If you believe that it does, then you include that recommendation, and that recommendation would be.
Sorry, Lindsay, you're chopping in and out. Can you repeat the last 20, 30 seconds?
Yeah, is that better?
Sure, keep talking. You're just coming in and out briefly.
Okay, I don't know why. Now there's an echo, so I'm sorry if you're hearing that on your end, but what I was adding was that similar to the contribution, your recommendation could be a finding of consistency for this bill, but also include or recommend that it include the change of ownership language that's currently within the code that was inadvertently left out in this draft. I think you can certainly make that recommendation that it be added back in.
Thank you.
Tom?
Go ahead.
Amy, again, I thought that would have been part of your tracking, the point that was made as to the life cycle of the cycles and of the panels, and who would have been accountable at the end to be sure that those panels were properly disposed of or replaced. So you'd have to track the ownership, and I thought that was part of what we had discussed early in the 3 years ago.
Okay, so, well, first of all, we haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't had to track a change of ownership yet for the projects that are constructed. We certainly have not entered into the world of decommissioning yet. So none of those aspects of enforcement have occurred yet. There have not been any projects that have lived through their lifespan where they've been decommissioned yet. Most of them are pretty newly constructed. Our largest project, to give an example of, is Bluegrass Solar.
What we're doing here is legacy. I mean,
yes,
we're putting it in place for those who follow, and so, to make it easier on those who follow, to be tracking it from the beginning, sets the precedent of how we want to manage something like this, so we don't get trapped and people are pointing fingers. Well, no, it's their job or their job.
No, you're right. But I thought your question was, what have we done so far? But no, we haven't done it yet.
I thought it was part of the original discussion we had a bit ago, so I just want to be sure it was included, as Tom's referencing.
There is a requirement so the decommissioning plan carries a decommissioning bond, and as Stephanie's pointed out, there's a securitization bond true up every 5 years.
Right.
So that is one way in which a change of ownership would be tracked.
Sure.
But I think adding the language that's in the existing code wouldn't, if Lindsay tells us it won't run afoul, and if we make findings of consistency, I think that's something that could be added to this draft.
I know we were very sensitive about that bond requirement to be sure that it didn't, just go by the wayside. So,
right.
Yeah, and I also want to make clear that the decommissioning plan, when it is reviewed prior to it being approved, a component of it is that it states, and is required to state, that it applies to the landowner and any successor, heir, or assign. So I understand the issue with tracking and not knowing who may own the property, but if 50 years from now, it has changed hands, the county still has the legal authority to bind it with the current landowner.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the rationale of getting to this tracking in the first place was compliance with other issues, not so much the decommissioning side, but mortality of trees, for example, and we were paying council hours to find and track a ghost. So we had this discussion to close that loophole and make it easier and more efficient and more transparent. So it seems to me that we should continue and include that rather than take a step backwards. My opinion. Yes. Let me see if there's any more. Is it okay if I ask for more public comment? Is that fine? Is there any more that haven't listed? Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, Scott McGlashan, co-owner of Parson Green Farm here in Queen Anne's County. First off, I want to state, and I'm glad to see Joe Pippin here. I serve on the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation Board for our county. And although we have not met, I would think, and Joe, you correct me if I'm wrong, that our board would support this proposed ordinance. The other thing I wanted to say quickly, too, is that I'm also a member of FARM. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, Farmers Alliance for Rural Maryland. And here again, we have not met about this, but I think, and Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, I would think, and from the emails I've seen here in the last couple of days, we would highly support this resolution in the preservation of agriculture. I want to say one thing personally, and as most of you know, I was your clerk of court for 24 years, and Kathy will know very well when she was in Annapolis. I served on the Judiciary Legislative Committee for most of those years. Folks, I've seen a lot of good legislation. I've seen a lot of bad legislation, but I've never seen a piece of legislation any worse than 931, Senate Bill 931. It's outrageous. And there's a lot of hard work by the ag community in Annapolis, but they might as well have been talking to a brick wall. But that's just a personal observation. I want that on the record. The other quick thing, too, you're talking about this ownership thing. I think you got two things going on. The landowner, that's in the public record, in the land records. You'll know who the landowner is. The important thing is who the solar company is. Somebody made a statement about something on the fence. Because here in the county, I don't know if you know the old Windsor Hastings property down where on 404. And the county got to the point where they wanted to send a tax bill. And guess what? They couldn't figure out who in the hell owned that project. So yes, I think, as the chairman pointed out, it's a terribly important component. But I don't think the 2510 maybe doesn't go far enough, but I think it's a good start. And so I'd highly recommend your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McGlashan. Anyone else who did not formally sign the sheet but would like to make public comment?
I can,
Yeah, please.
say something.
Just introduce yourself first, please.
Sure. Matt Nielsen. I'm a farmer here in Centerville, first generation beginning farmer, and grow certified organic row crops. I said a few things in Annapolis under testimony for the 931 debate, and a couple of the things that I just wanted to mention is just to put in perspective how important having open farm ground is in this area. We all know how important it is to our local economy, but in terms of the broader long-term impacts of losing farmland, we're within a 6-hour drive of 18% of the nation's population, which is kind of staggering when you think about it. And in addition, we have good aquifers. Irrigation is plentiful, and a good climate. It rains here. It's not California. So as agriculture changes over time, we don't know where we'll be 100 years from now. There may be, fresh market produce grown in large scale again in this area. So just keeping that in perspective, I'm also concerned about, as a beginning farmer, being able to compete and be able to attain land potentially in the future. I don't know how I'd compete with a solar company that's paying $5,000 an acre in a lease situation. So just anything we can do, and I appreciate this ordinance in terms of trying to give back to the MALF program. The state's done an excellent job. We all know the work that's been done in Queen Anne's to preserve land, but anything we can do to put a bulwark in that system for me and other young farmers and older farmers, across the county and the state. And that's pretty much all I'd want to say. But anything we can do to help us there would be great. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
for the record, Mr. Nielsen and Hermitage Farm LLC, of which I'm an owner, does have a contractual relationship. Just noted.
Good morning.
Hi, I am Betsy Leager. I'm a farmer. I live in Upper Queen Anne's County with my husband, Tom. We farm several thousand acres. I have 4 sons, 7 grandsons, and 1 more on the way. So I just want to speak on behalf of surely in favor of this fee. Land preservation, we were honored to get it 2 or 3 years ago, and what an impact it made to help us keep farming. And when the governor took away all that money from land preservation, boy, it just really hit home to me because I know how it truly saved our farming operation for our 4 sons. I'm extremely compassionate about this. And my 7 grandsons to keep farming in the county. We helped all of our children with that, and with all that money going, I surely hope this impact fee will help. I hope that it can also include Class 2 soils, because we saw on the map how much more ground that would be to help future generations. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Leager, for your time and testimony. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Go ahead, Rob.
So I spoke pretty definitive. It is not in the code. The requirement is written notice if the operation hasn't been in continuous operation for 6 months. We have required it as condition of Board of Appeals approvals, and we have had notice of, did you find a staff report that? Bluegrass Solar has changed ownership. They did notify us, but if they don't tell us, we don't have a way to.
No.
This is
Love that we got the whole team involved.
Steve Johnson, my lovely colleague here. That's where I disappeared to. I was like, hey man, I can't find it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that I'd seen it, so.
I was pretty sure I've seen it. That's why I was so definitive.
Well, we've talked enough about it, and,
Yeah.
and I've,
That's
you
why
know,
we have a good team.
yes.
See if I can find it.
Thank you for going online.
Yeah, it might be,
As
if
we were
I can
touting
get
our
there, because this
online
is not my computer
abilities.
normally, so I'm like,
Steve's back there with a gigantic book.
it's a race now.
How about we do this? How about we take a 2 or 3 minute break while we're settling this discussion, and we'll reconvene in, well, let's just say 5 minutes.
Thank you, that's a good idea.
Yep.
There's a typo in your findings.
Just so you cite the right article.
Ready?
Hey,
Now we're
Stephanie,
good.
Stephanie, will you bring that back up?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We're back in session, and thank you for your patience. Rob, if you have the floor, would you continue with your research investigation, please?
All right, I knew I wasn't crazy. Let me correct myself yet one more time. It is in there, if you look at your screens, number 5, it's kind of buried in this code into the submission requirements, but it says information about the applicant, its renewable energy portfolio, whether or not they intend to operate the array, likely future owners, and a process by which the future owners and/or utility operators will be identified to the county. So that code requirement spurs the conditions in the solar projects that we take to you guys and to the Board of Appeals. And that condition states applicant must notify planning and zoning when ownership of the solar array changes, and the signage containing emergency contact information must be kept current.
Much more concise and direct, I think.
Yes. So that's what exists on all the solar approvals so far in the county.
As a condition, that gets reviewed by the Board of Appeals.
Yes.
During the conditional use process.
Yep.
Understood.
And you guys.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, our recommendation to
absolutely.
said Board of Appeals. Okay, thank you for that deep dive. All right. Any more discussion from staff and/or the panel on this? All right, I will take up a recommendation, however.
Mr. Chairman, I think there were at least 2 other people that wanted to speak during public comment. You got crossways, and I think there were a couple people that still wanted to add their comment.
Okay, I have closed public comment, but I think this is a worthy discussion. I can grant some latitude. Good morning.
Morning. I'm Ellen Denny. My husband is William Walter Denny Jr. He's been a farmer of Queen Anne's County all his life. We married in '76, so we've been married 49 years, and I always helped him on the farm. We farmed together. We were never able to own a farm because of price of land went up when foreign investors started in. And finally, 20-some years after we got married, we were able to own our own farm. My son, he farms, and he's always wanted to be a farmer. And he has got several acres now because we have helped him buy his own farm and buy a couple other farms. But his son, who's 12, has been helping him on the farm and wants to be a farmer. And if these solar panels take over, he's not going to be a future farmer. He's not going to be able to farm anything. He's not going to be able to find property to farm or to buy or to own. So I just wanted to say, you know, we need some restrictions or something to help keep farm ground in Queen Anne's County. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that the only addition to public comment? All right. Thank you very much. Public comment is closed again. Any more discussion at the table here? Staff or commissioners? All right, I will entertain a resolution if there is one to be made.
Right. Mr. Vice Chair, be it resolved that the Planning Commission makes a favorable recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners regarding Commissioner-sponsored text amendment number 25-10 to amend the existing solar energy system standards and add community solar energy generating systems and energy storage devices to be more consistent with the state law by amending zoning districts and standards and repealing conditional use standards in legislation adopted in County Ordinance Number 25-10, Renewable Energy Certainty Act. The Planning Commission provides the following findings: that this resolution is this text amendment is consistent with zoning and subdivision regulations, is consistent with the annotated Code of Maryland, SB 931, Public Utilities, and is consistent with the comprehensive plan. I'd like to include in my motion any and all staff findings to this effect, with emphasis on its consistency with paragraph 18-1 Maryland Code annotated land use, natural resources, public utilities articles, that it is consistent with the land use chapter on preservation of agriculture, with emphasis that existing language regarding change of ownership be added, that the compensatory preservation contribution is consistent with the land use component of our comprehensive plan, and that this would be 50% of the fair market value of MALF appraisals from the previous year, that we add SIBE to the purpose statement, and that the comprehensive contribution should be based upon the project area.
That sound fair to staff and council that were listening? Commissioners?
Yes.
Anything we missed? I have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments that wish to be made before closing the meeting on this or any other topic open before this board? Seeing none, is there another resolution?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much for your time. And public, thank you for coming out and weighing in on this very important issue.
Who is making the motion to?